Hi, I'm Hannah Wadhams, the idiot who forgot to record her webinar properly yesterday. But here I am, re-recording it for you because I'm nice like that. Today we're going to be talking about two things in particular. Learner engagement, and why when it comes to learner engagement and marketing for learning, sometimes thinking small is good enough and will get you the biggest impact. Everybody's talking about engagement right now. And I don't just mean in L&D. Netflix have seen a huge boost of engagement over the last 16 to 18 months or so, because we've had nothing better to do than sit in and watch random documentaries, or binge watch Friends if you're me. But conversely, other industries have seen a huge knock-on effect of the pandemic to their engagement levels. For example, I went to London the other day, and I've lived in and around London now for over 20 years. And I saw empty adverts in tube carriages. When I ran a tube advertising campaign a few years ago, I had to wait nearly 6 months until they had a slot. But their engagement has plummeted so much that now there's empty ads. Of course, it makes sense people aren't on the tube anymore. But it just goes to show how much the last year or so has really changed our lives. I actually read a report by Aviva this week. It was talking about people's commitment to their career and how that has also changed thanks to the pandemic. In fact, it said people are less career focused and less career driven now than they were before COVID-19 hit. And that poses a big predicament for L&D teams. If people are less engaged with their work, we've got a harder job making them engaged with learning, haven't we? Last week, I ran a super scientific poll on LinkedIn. I say super scientific because I forgot to include one of the options, which of course was the learner. But you can see there's a pretty even split across all options here. And there was an interesting debate around leadership's involvement. But there was hundreds of comments on this post. And it all came back to one thing. The buck lies with the learning team. No matter which way you cut it, no matter how you try to shift the blame, whether your managers are disengaged or your leadership team is disengaged, it all comes back to the learning team. And the learning team are the only team held accountable for learner engagement. And it's normally at this time in an L&D webinar or a marketing webinar that the clichés come out. We tell you to think big. We tell you to get inspiration from the world around you, to copy movie-like trailers for your e-learning courses, for example. And I'm here to tell you that that needn't be the case. Sometimes thinking small and keeping ideas really simple is good enough. So no, you don't need to think outside the box. Really, all we need to do is be creative. So what does creativity really mean to you? Here are some of the words that came up from our webinar. Imagination, individuality, initiative, freedom to try and fail. None of these words say you need a big budget and you need to go all out. It's just about thinking a little bit differently. Last year was a year of learning new stuff for us all. Whether it was social distancing, remembering to wear your mask when you left the house, staying 2 meters away from people in the supermarket and so on. All of us, no matter our age, who we are, our upbringing, whatever, we were all learning stuff last year. Quite sweet, actually. My nephew asked my sister-in-law what it was like the last time we went through a global pandemic. And she tried to explain to him it was the first time, and it blew his mind that Mummy and Daddy hadn't been through it before. We were all in the same boat last year, and we all needed to learn new stuff. So there was organisations such as your supermarket that really had to deal with how they were going to help us learn and help us remember those new things. And actually the simplest ideas in those examples were the most effective. Putting a bit of tape on the floor. Now, Excuse a terrible picture. Surprisingly, there aren't many around. But there is nothing that's out of the box or big budget in this picture. Simply put, they've run down to aisle 32, grabbed the black and yellow tape and stuck it on the floor 2 meters apart. It's simple, but it worked. And of course, over the last year or so, people have jumped on the bandwagon. You can now buy social distancing tape. But the tape saying please stay 2 meters apart does not make it any more effective. The effectiveness comes from the tape being on the floor and people realising that's a 2 metre gap. There's also another example here, again from a supermarket related to COVID-19, of when Sainsbury's decided to change up the colours on all of their COVID posters. You'll see in the first image on the left, they'd really stuck on brand and it kind of blended in with the rest of their shop. But early this year, they changed all those posters to blue. And blue and orange are almost opposite on the colour wheel, so it really makes them stand out. Changing a colour isn't a big budget thing to do. Don't get me wrong, the amount of posters they probably had to reprint, I'm sure it cost them a fair whack. But it was worth it. They were more noticeable and people started paying attention. So what simple ideas can you implement that make a big impact? The first one, better copy. It's so simple, but it's effective. Are you guilty of sending out that "Where's a new course in the LMS" email to all of your learners en masse, one email, bish bash bosh, done? It's really odd to me that we do that so frequently in learning. We spend time and effort getting the learning right, whether it's a training program, a virtual delivery, an e-learning course, whatever it is. We have expert instructional designers that spend time thinking about how each interaction takes place. We have learning experience designers that think of it start to end. And then often it's introduced with a really boring email. And it's time that stopped. There's a phrase that's becoming a bit popular here at Maths, unsurprisingly, about silver pineapples, and to silver pineapple something, to give it a zhuzh, give it some life. And firstly, you need to think about your subject lines when you're sending these emails. I don't know about you, but when I get an email, I get 100-ish a day. If the subject line is boring, I am not going to read the email. I will be honest with you, I delete them. Obviously, unless it's a client. But if it's a marketing email or something corporate and internal, I'm not going to read it if it doesn't grab my attention there and then. And there's some really, really good tools out there to really help you hone your craft with subject lines. And a couple of them are on your screen now. And then you need to think about your copy. Often you'll get an email telling you about a learning program or a learning event of some sort that's happening, and it's paragraph after paragraph of text. That's not appealing to anybody. And as Paula said, there's nothing worse than a big wall of text. It's off-putting, it's scary, nobody wants to read it. And often people will get to that email and go, I'll read that later, it's really long. And then the next thing they know, 3 weeks has passed, and they're even less likely now to take action on that email than they were 3 weeks ago. So you really need to hone in on the what's in it for me. What are your learners going to get out of this program? And all too often I've seen these emails that are far too long also talk about the L&D team have worked really hard on this. And I'm really sorry to say it, guys, but the learner doesn't care. You've done your job at that point, so that's what that sentence is saying to them. The L&D team have done their job. Your reward about working really hard to create the course, which I'm obviously sure you did, is people taking it and creating that behavioural change that we all want as learning professionals. It's not about the learning team worked really hard. Clap for the learning team. So chunk up your email. Make it really clear. Use formatting. And make it clear that you want them to take an action at the end. Of course, in marketing, we have email platforms that are big, robust, and help us design emails and so on. But you can do all of this in your normal emails, so Gmail or Outlook. You can use bold and underline, you can change font sizes and so on. There is a universal digital language that every single one of your learners, your colleagues, your peers, your leadership team, your most junior employees will understand. For example, if I see a piece of text that's blue and underlined, I know I can click on it, and your learners will know that too. So make a clear call to action. Hey, you can even bold it, make it bigger, and make it blue and underlined. Just make people want to click on it. Because that's the point in these emails. You want them to take action. You want them to sign up to the upcoming training course. You want them to go into the learning platform and take the e-learning course you've just created, and so on. But think about the what's in it for them and focus on that throughout your email. Don't make it a compliance training. Because whether it's compliance training or not, telling people they have to do something is not the intrinsic motivation we want to stimulate. And we got a question here from Jack about, surely that's going to get difficult if you're churning out compliance course after compliance course after compliance course. And okay, perhaps it will. But each of your courses or each of your learning opportunities, whether again it's face-to-face or a training program or whatever, should have a different objective. It should be hitting a different need of your learners. So therefore, the what's in it for me should be different for each program, and you should be able to pull that out in your email. And if you can't, I would hazard a guess that the problem's probably slightly bigger than your communications. Idea 2, stand out. All too often in learning, I have seen people shy away from the limelight. You don't want people to pay attention to learning, but in the same respect, you're asking them to be engaged with what you do. It's time to talk about what we do. It's time to really stand out. Often, your brand guidelines will have a primary colour and a secondary colour palette. See if you can pinch one of the secondary colours and coin it as your own. Create a learning brand that really helps you stand out and helps you get that impact that you need and you deserve for your learning. And brand isn't just about colours and images and fonts. It's also about your tone of voice. If you're a huge corporate, can you take a bit more of a relaxed tone if your learners are internal? Can you be a bit more colloquial? Put a few jokes in. If your learners are external, can you create a completely subset brand? Think about your own social media channels and your own website even. Those things, okay, a website will take money, but on the most part, will just take time. It's really important to create a brand that your learners can relate to. And branding in learning is a huge topic, and we've got another webinar on that if you're interested. But idea number 2, standing out and creating a brand, is a great way of doing that. But as I said, it's time to stop hiding from the limelight. It's time to stop shying away. It's time to stop standing behind the CEO. All too often, I'm seeing emails go out that are written by the L&D team, but then sent by the CEO just so people pay attention. And there you're walking on that tightrope again of, even though it's not compliance training, you're making it compulsory. That's not going to get you the behavioural change or the impact you actually want. So it's time to be the face of your brand. Be proud of the work you've done. And selfie videos are a great way of doing this. It's a little bit intimidating at first, but it's fine. As soon as you've got the first one out the way, you'll feel much more confident. That also gives people something more than an email. Ignoring an email is really easy because you're not thinking of the person behind the screen. But when it's a video and they can see you, it feels a bit more personal to them. Also, if it's something you've never done before, they're going to be intrigued. They're going to be like, oh, what's going on here? Why can I see Hannah in a video? I want to watch that. How long they last is another matter. But be confident and use video as something that you can really leverage for free. The only thing you'll need here is time. A 3-minute video might take you 30 minutes or an hour because of the sheer amount of times that you'll change your mind about what you're saying, delete it, start again, change the item, and so on. But the more and more you do, the quicker it'll become. And you also need to follow your learners. There's no point creating a video and then attaching it to an email. Nobody's ever going to open that attachment, I'm sorry. Your boss might, or your friend in the other department might. You want to embed it into emails if possible. You want to put it where your learners are. So if your learners spend all day, every day on Slack, put it on Slack. Put it on the whole company channel. If you use Yammer or Workplace by Facebook, like Paula said here, put your videos there. Put your informational snippets there. Talk about the what's in it for me of this upcoming training course there. Go to where they are. Don't expect them to come to you. So, there you have it. My 3 simple ideas that can help you make big learner engagement impacts. The first, think about your copy. Do not underestimate the power of good copy. 2, stop trying to hide away from the limelight. Be confident in what we're doing. Be confident in the impact we're making. And that will trickle through. And 3, follow your learners. Don't expect them to come to you. You must go to them. Stalk them on social media platforms and so on. Obviously, at this point in a webinar, you normally ask for any questions, and we had a few, but I've integrated them throughout this recording. If you do have any more questions, feel free to drop me an email. The email address is hannah@massmarketing.co.uk, and I'll be more than happy to help. Thanks. Bye.